know.
So you have your show now that's every Sunday.
So it hasn't launched yet. So it's so we're gonna be starting basically like a Sunday evening news show.
Which I love.
It's gonna be called Call the List under sort of my umbrella, which is not my objection. And I really wanted to do that because it's really hard, I think, to find real news and dependable information. And, I'm somebody who likes, I'm in this world, law and politics. And
you're an attorney, correct?
I'm an attorney, yep. And I have found it increasingly difficult to find good, reliable sources, you know, that you really have to go searching for. And so my hope is to kind of gather like the pieces that I think are important that people aren't hearing. So I'm going to be doing that on Sunday nights and then a weekly podcast episode. So just kind of branching out. I mean, I've been talking on TikTok for a couple of years and Instagram. And
I know I was funneling through all your videos last night and I was like, I agree. I like her. Like I was like, this is going to be great.
I don't really fit in a box. I'm a little bit of like everything, but I think it's important to be talking about this kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So we'll see where it takes us.
What's your specialty with in-law? Like, what do you...
So mainly I've practiced criminally.
Okay.
Yeah. When I'm in practice now with my father, Loftus and Loftus Doc. And when I went to law school, I worked in the DA's office in Suffolk County.
Okay.
And I went at night and I worked as an administrative assistant. And then I was a prosecutor for a couple of years. And after that, I went into practice with my dad, and then did a lot of criminal defense work on that side. And a lot of his practice is civil litigation. So he's been doing it for 40 years. So we kind of share that. But most of what I really like, the stuff I love and like the meat of it, has always been criminal. Because it's there's a lot of the law can be very boring in some ways, and criminal is sort of this more fast paced, like you feel it. There's a lot more on the line. It's not just
it's emotional
money
too.
or property. It's people's livelihoods, victims. So so that's mostly what I've been doing since I've been practicing,
that's awesome.
I'm in my 11th year, which is crazy.
Really?
I feel very old.
I was gonna say you don't like seeing. And then you have children, correct?
Yep, I have 2 little ones. I have 9-year-olds and a 6-year-old. So
that's a lot to. Do you ever feel with practicing with like criminals and stuff, do you ever feel like there's anything that could happen to you? Like, are you afraid for your kids ever?
No.
Because I feel like with everything going on right now, people are like very nervous about.
Not in that sense. I mean, I would be probably more nervous for, maybe some of the stuff I say online and some of the positions they take. Like, I think people get more frustrated with that kind of stuff. In terms of, the criminal system, for the most part, defendants, there's sort of this separation between like the system and like personal. You always hear stories sometimes of either, prosecutors or defense attorneys, being harmed by, defendants in the system.
Yeah.
But that's pretty rare. And I've had quite a few people, talk to me disrespectfully, but not in a way that I ever felt like threatened or, they would come for
I think that people view that job and they look at like Blue Bloods, they look at all these TV shows and they're like, is that what the type of life that they live? Like, are you afraid to like walk out of the courthouse? Like, no. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that it's cool that you're just like, no, this is just my job.
Yeah. And I think too, for the most part, I mean, there's a lot of people who get wrapped up in the criminal system that don't have any prior involvement. So, it's a different experience for them, but the unfortunate reality is most of the people who are in that system have been in it and continue to be it. So it's almost like all the players know their roles. You know what I mean? It's a lot of times defendants, they understand what prosecutors do, what the judge does. Like everybody sort of plays their part. And I think for the most part, everybody kind of respects the boundaries.
And I know you were super involved with the whole Karen Reed.
I did, I covered the Karen Reed trial.
How do you feel about all of it? Like, what's your take on? Like, give me like how you feel how it all went down.
I think it's complicated. Think it's complicated. I think that there's sort of so many competing interests. You look at what the job of a prosecutor is, which is to theoretically bring, justice and closure to a victim and their family. You look at what a defendant's rights are and what they're entitled to. So, I think that in many ways it in a good way sort of showcased that there are problems within the system.
100%.
But I also think that it's just this kind of new world that we live in that's, social media, the internet, everybody knows everything about everything.
Yeah.
And it took on a life of its own that I don't know was beneficial for sort of the bigger structure. But, sometimes you need these like hot button top,
Pieces.
Top of the mind cases. You just never know what's going to hit. For everybody to say like, okay, let's take a second look at how the system works. What can we change? So, it was an interesting ride. I'll tell you now that the second trial is over and it's, there's still a lot going on with the cases, the civil
I'm sure.
Litigation, but it's for me covering it. It's really interesting to watch now, like that it's over, the vitriol has kind of quieted a little bit, it's so you can see like we have these little like windows into certain things that like trigger people, and I had a lot of perspectives that people didn't necessarily agree with.
Being an attorney, I would assume that the way you viewed things was very different than like a more emotional person viewing it. Like I think the view from social media and it was crazy. If you looked on, I'm sure obviously you looked online, there was people that really thought she was guilty and there was people that really thought she wasn't. And it was like this crazy fight of like, it's almost like today's like left versus right. Yes. You know what I mean? Like it was insane how like nasty people would get about it.
I mean, you're exactly right. That it was sort of this, it like mimicked the political world we live in today, which is that there's no gray, and that if you think differently than me, then you're the enemy, quite literally. And that's what happened with the case is that, people could not comprehend that someone had a different perspective. And I mean, that's sort of indicative of the bigger problem that we have in society that, listen, we can all watch something and we're all entitled to come to our own conclusions. And, it's like you have to be able to accept that we're not always going to agree on everything.
I think that's a huge thing right now. I think that it's like the left versus the right. And I love politics, and I know you do too. And I've never, especially now with the whole Charlie Kirk thing, which I think is absolutely terrible. There is no gray.
No.
You're not, if you like Trump, then you're this MAGA crazy whatever, like you're this crazy person. If you're on the left, it's the complete like crazy radical left side. I'm just like the everyday person that likes common sense.
Yeah.
Like, but I think, I think that people need to just chill a little bit with it.
I actually think that most people are like you or how I think of as me is just when you talk to like everyday people, most people don't really live in the extremes. Everyone's pretty common sense. Most people identify the same issues. They just might have a different, perspective on how to solve the issues. But what we seem to be run by is the extremes of both parties. So we're all kind of reacting on what we think of as the left or what we think of as the right.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it's really an accurate reflection of it, but it's really, it's difficult for me to watch, and it's something I'm always talking about. Like, listen, we have to be able to have conversations without it's not black and white. I mean, nothing in the world is black and white. There's always nuance. There's always context.
Absolutely.
So, it's like you said with Charlie Kirk and the assassination, it just. You got 6 hours of everybody calling for let's come together and use this as a moment, and then it just goes right up, and everybody's back into their their siphons, and it's swirling away. And
I think both sides. I think that no buildings were burning when after it happened. You know what I mean? I think if God forbid, if it was AOC, I feel like it would be a completely different story, right? And is that because it's the left versus the right that it's happening to? I don't know. I think what's happening is the people mocking it.
Yeah.
The people that are celebrating, regardless if you agreed with him or not. Like he had a family, kids.
Right.
Like, why are we celebrating someone's death like that who really didn't do anything negative to anybody?
Well, aside from
disagreeing,
voice,
but just disagreeing.
Right.
But it doesn't make sense to me that these people would call him a fascist and all of these things. They must not know what the definition of it is, because silencing someone for just saying that's more of that than just letting him talk.
Right.
You know, so.
And I think what has happened, we've gotten to this place that, you know, when we think of somebody with an opposing perspective, you know, as almost evil. I mean, I think that's how it feels to me, that, you know, in large part, if we were going to, you know, we're talking broadly, obviously,
Yeah, that's
but,
fine.
you know, that the Republican Party broadly looks, you know, at the Democrats as wrong and bad. And, you know, and the Democrats look at the Republicans as really as the same. And when we put people into categories, it allows us to dehumanize, you know what I mean? So we don't think of somebody as, you know, a human being sitting in front of me. We look at like, oh, Charlie Kirk, and he had these positions I don't agree with. And, you know, so, well, you know, if you do this, you get that. And that's really a reflection of the entire society as a whole, and like how really degraded we are. Because, you know, I like to think of America as a place of ideas, you know, and open discussion and debate, and the ability to, you know, sit down and have a conversation with people who you agree with, people you don't agree with, and that's okay, you know. And but that's what happens, is that, you know, many people who are probably more on the far left, you know, the way they act about this, you know, the taking of human life, and have
it's very like nonchalant. It's very, and maybe is it because this generation of kids like grew up maybe like in front of a TV playing, like a lot of people say, well, you're playing these really, really violent video games. Has it desensitized you? Has social media desensitized you to a point where like watching someone die right in front of you was really just not a big deal? That's concerning.
It's super concerning.
Concerning. I'm sure, I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but I'm sure there's a lot of kids that were at that event that are hurting right now. They couldn't believe what they just saw, but there's other people that are like, oh yeah, you know, it happened, no big deal.
You know,
and that's really weird.
It's interesting. It'd be interesting to see, you know, because most of us saw it, you know, the clip, and I think most everywhere. Of us didn't. You know, when we opened it, didn't understand how violent it was going to be. Yeah. And, you know, in some ways, it's really, you look at, we're seeing this over and over. So we are desensitized. Like, he's more of a public figure. So, you know, there's sort of a little bit of a deeper analysis on it. But I mean, how long do we pay attention to school shootings for? I mean, this is something I talk about every time I post about a school shooting. I always make a point to say, we're not going to be talking about this in 24 hours. You know, so it gets old. Isn't that the problem? I mean, how can we have, you know, children being killed in a church or a school, and we all... We're like, we don't even think about it. I mean, we really don't. And and so the only people left affected are the people on the ground who see those other people as human beings, you know, but for us, it's just, you know, and
another shooting. But I don't think I think that brings it to the point too, is if when you say that, like, oh, it's another shooting, everyone's like, well, guns are the problem. And personally for me, I mean, as someone who owns many of them, you know, and I particularly just like shooting more for sport. But when a bomb goes off, you don't blame the bomb. You blame the bomber. You know what I mean? So I feel like it sparks that debate of like, what's the gun policy? What's this? But if you look at all of these people who are doing these crimes, first of all, and I agree with your video you said the other day, it is all young white males. That's not like a race thing. Like, that's just a fact. All of them are just young white males. But they're all these, like, they're into these very weird, I will say a lot of them are left things, but like, they're into these things, but they would bad people get guns if they're legal or not. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't think it's a gun problem. I think it's a lot of it could be a parenting problem. I think there's way more to unpack here than just blaming like the guns that are the problem.
Right. I think for me, it's sort of in the middle. You know, I think that, like we see with almost every single, you know, incident, wherever it is, it's like immediately one side's like, take away the guns, regulate the guns. The other side is like, it's all mental health. And I'm like, I don't know. It's really a combination of the two. I agree. Think, because, you know, I mean, we're in Massachusetts where it's not easy to get a firearm. No, if you're mentally ill.
In the butt to get anything. Even if you don't have problems, it's hard to get it.
Right. And, you know, so I think, in some ways I look at a state like ours and I go like, okay, that seems to be like a sort of middle ground for me. A well-regulated, we know who has them. And then the people who have them, are hopefully responsible gun owners, right? Because, I personally don't have anything. We have the Second Amendment, and I think people should be able to have firearms. On the other hand, we have a lot of states in the country that are very different culturally than Massachusetts. So, if you're growing up in Wyoming or Texas, it's you grow up around guns in a different way than you might here. But maybe someplace like that where somebody who is mentally ill it's a lot easier for them to get it. So I feel like there's so much more to the conversation.
Exactly.
Again, what happens is it's like we just blanket these like, if we regulate the guns, the solution will, it'll be solved. That's not how the real world works, right? Like it's someplace in the middle. But we have to have the conversation. And what happens is we look at the other side as you're the problem, I'm good, you're bad. And so then we don't have a talk and then nothing gets fixed.
Exactly. I think that, again, it's not black and white.
Right.
It's just never going to be one of those black and white things. I think a lot, how do you feel about the whole, like with this kid that got arrested for Charlie Kirk saying, do you think like he's the person who did it? Do you think he's
I don't know.
There's a lot of like, I don't want to say maybe conspiracies, but like on a gun perspective, like there's a lot of taking apart, putting it together, taking apart, putting it together. That doesn't really make much sense to me. So like as an attorney, how do you feel like that all unpacks and looks like?
Well, it's really interesting because one of the things I've been thinking about, just sort of following it along, is that in thinking about this, because we live in the world we do where everybody feels like they're entitled to like information and access right away. The way I look at generally, okay, so this just happened 5 days ago at this point, to me, most of the information relative to the case shouldn't be out for public consumption.
I agree.
The governor shouldn't be talking about it. The police shouldn't be talking about it. Cash Patel shouldn't be on Fox and Friends talking about it. Because what's happening is we've already found out that, some of the information they're putting out is right. Some of the information they're putting out is wrong. And I also think it
creates a manhunt.
Yeah. And it creates a problem legally within, the criminal case that's going to come when you have public figures out here, saying, okay, well, it was at this time. And like you said, there's one theory that he disassembled it, but the video doesn't seem to reflect that. So, I think when we almost live in this world where now our government in sort of like the online / public world, everyone thinks they're just like entitled to all the information all the time right away. And our officials and politicians kind of cater to that. Yeah. And I don't think it's helpful for a prosecution ultimately.
I think it's creating like a hysteria too. Yes. People are wondering like, is it him?
Correct. Right.
Because there's a lot. I also think Candace Owens, who I do like, but I think that I don't know if you've watched her 2 videos that she put out. Like there's a lot of things that seem fishy. Yeah. Like was it him?
Right.
With maybe financial incentives from other nations. Like was that a problem? Right. So I think that some people will get really
conspiratorial.
Thank you. Yeah. About it, or some people are just saying, hey, it's just this kid who's like this radical kid that just shot him.
Well, and that's why it's hard to know. And it feels like, okay, they made an arrest. Well, from like a legal perspective, in the best case scenario, I would say like, okay, tight-lipped, let's not talk. Let's, investigate the case, do everything you have to do, leave no stone unturned. And then when they're charged, you put together a statement of the case, some stuff comes out. But what happens is we have this kind of mass hysteria where people are now, they're zooming in on other people on, it's this person. And that's dangerous too, because that might just be a normal person in the background of a video who's not doing anything. And who's someone online saying, oh, is it that person instead who's, the guy in the white shirt who's moving his arms or
the guy next to him and like with that. Like, was it him that shot him? Like, look what he put in his pocket. Right. There's just so many.
And realistically, none of us from home are going to solve. You know what I mean?
It's almost like we're all just Vantage Point. When it's like everyone has a different view And when you watch it, it tells a different story at
Right.
each one. Which one is the truth?
Right.
And I think that's what's happening. But online, it's turning into this, let's solve the case because they're not going to do it. Is the fact that they're not going to do it because there's other things involved? I mean, there's just like so much.
Well, I think that goes really, bigger picture-wise to the mistrust that people have in the system. So now that's what's happened. Like, I mean, in the criminal system, almost every case we see now, I mean, people like, is that really the case? And to be fair, most of the time it is. Most of the time, like what it presents as, it probably is. I mean, are there things sometimes in other cases that are like, this doesn't pass the sniff test, but because we've lost, like say in the Karen Reed case, people have lost trust in the Norfolk DAs or the state police.
Yeah.
Then what happens is anytime there's a case, it's like, oh, it must be something else, and so it's just this sort of erosion overall of trust.
Yeah.
And the same thing with, the FBI. I mean, they're the same ones saying there's no Epstein list, and then they're like, okay, but we're supposed to believe everything they say about. So people just are like, what do we do? Who do we believe?
But I think with Epstein, and it's interesting that you bring that up. I'm very torn about it because do I think there's a list? Sure, I'm no doubt there's some sort of list. However, do I think they would ever release that information to the public?
No.
Absolutely not. I also think that if it is this, do I think it's disgusting that they're protecting these people if there is a list? It's gross.
Yeah.
I mean, like hurting children, whatever age they are. I mean, I also think there's a big difference too between, and I don't mean this, I guess this is going to sound awful no matter how I say it. But are they underage as in, I know they're underage and it doesn't matter they're underage, but are they 17 and a half underage? Or are we talking about 6-year-olds? I think like there has to be like a conversation with that too. But I feel like it would make the economy crumble.
Yeah, well,
if they had all of these people, and let's just say Trump's on it or Trump's not on it. I think if Trump was legitimately on it when the Biden administration had 4 years to pull it out, it would have been out. Unless a lot of their side is on it too.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I think that's probably more
do you know what I mean? So there's all these people on it. And the main focus for them too is to keep the US dollar where it's at. If you have all of these people, including foreign like government officials over wherever on that, it could lessen the value of the dollar too. So what are they protecting? Right. Are they protecting themselves or are they just protecting like the country or the world as it is, as it's stability, as it's going to stay stable if we release it or we don't release it?
I mean, that's the hard part is because we don't see anything, we don't know. And I think realistically, the likelihood is that there's a lot of people from every political spectrum 100%. On it, and there's no, there's no list
to me
as in, writing down. But, I think that, and I think to me, the strongest indication of that is that, either party who's in charge,
hasn't
like,
released it.
No, we're gonna, and it's, but for me, it's more, it goes again to this idea that, don't promise you're going to do something and then not do it and walk it back because then it's like, okay, well, do we trust this person is saying?
Yeah.
And so I think we've, to me, it all comes down to the internet, there's so many good things that have come from it. And, I've got a phone in front of my face half the day talking. And so there's lots of good things and benefits from it. But I do think it just has created this world where there's so much information accessible to like every single person that we used to have sort of this separation of like, okay, but like that's the government. We generally trust these people. We trust whoever the attorney general is. We trust whoever the president is, the secretary of state. And now it's nobody trusts anything. Or we trust people to a fault on our own side. And we would just blindly trust the people because they align with the ideals that we like. And so, it's just, I think no matter who is in power, everyone is now suspicious of these,
Oh, yeah. But I also think a lot of people are so angry about who's in power. But let's be real. The president doesn't affect your day-to-day life as a regular person.
For the most part.
You're still going to get up. You're still going to go to work or whatever that you do during the day. Like whoever's in there didn't change the fact that like I had to, clock in today.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I feel like people take it to a whole new level of like crazy, but it doesn't necessarily affect them. Now, does it affect some people? Absolutely. But depending on I'm sure like being an attorney, there's a lot of things with that. I'm sure it can affect. Yeah. But like me, like, no. Like,
right.
I mean, I own a podcast studio in a med spa. Like the president doesn't exactly dictate.
Well, I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you really want to pay attention to your local politics, because your city councilman or your local rep or your attorney general is going to be a lot more, you're going to have it's going to be a lot more of an effect on how you actually live your life and what happens in the state or the town that you live in. But people, it's the same thing about, how many people come out for a presidential election versus, you look at the mayor of Boston. We just had the preliminary race, and I think it's only like 23% of people come out to vote. So
you can't get mad
everybody's
about
upset about like the people at the top, and I'm like, those aren't really the ones that matter. I mean, they do matter, of course. The president of the United States
but
matters.
You have to think about your day-to-day, what's around you.
Right.
Like for example, I tried to run in North Reading for like select board.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And redacted very quickly because of the amount of time that you need to. And I have now I have 3 small kids. So I was like, I really can't commit to it. But even when you notice things that are shady on a local level and you try to vocalize it and it gets shut down, it almost made me doubt everything even more.
Yes.
I'm like, if you guys are doing this on a local level, this is what you did to people.
Yep.
And now we're just supposed to glaze over it. And now, then you're all doing it.
Yeah.
All these towns are doing it. So how do we fix this problem? And it's really hard to drain the swamp.
Yes.
It's so hard to do it. And it got to the point where I was like, honestly, I cannot dedicate this much time and not be paid for it. Because you're not paid for it.
No.
And it's hours, like every day to do it. Have you ever thought of like running for your town?
Yeah. I always thought I would run for something. I come from a pretty political family. My dad ran for state senate back in 1996 against Stephen Lynch and Billy Bulger Jr. And my uncles always run campaigns. My grandfather, ran stuff for the Teddy Kennedy and Bobby in the 60s. And so, I feel like politics is kind of in my blood, but I will tell you, with little kids, I'm like, I don't know that I want to subject my family to that, and so it's really disappointing because I get a lot of people like, you should run. I'm like, I know what will come, and there's so much nastiness and so much hatred. Mm-hmm. And we used to have a political system where I was actually watching. I have these old. Josh gave me this like VCR hookup, so I have these old videos of my dad debating, and
I love that.
That we were walking in the Southie Parade. And, he's interviewing Brian Wallace's interviews every candidate. And he, at the end, he says, whoever wins, like, you've got 3 great sons of South Boston. They've all run a great race. And that's what politics used to be, that people, you'd say like, okay, we have 4 good candidates. They'll all shake each other's hands. They all respect each other.
Yeah, now it's nasty.
Everybody respects sort of the process. And now if you throw your hat in the ring, it's like, you got to be ready for the onslaught. And I don't know that, I don't know that any of us really want that, or you really have to like steel yourself, So with little kids, I'm like, I don't think so.
I have a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a newborn. And honestly, I could never it's not, is it worth the time?
Yeah.
I think that's what it comes down to too. And I think that's also the problem with like local is it is so demanding that the younger people where these policies affect them can't really put their name in to help fix it because you're having meetings at 5 o'clock. People are having dinner. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's not attainable for families to do. So now you have these retired people in these committees doing these things that have no idea about what the day-to-day struggles that the families that are actually like in the town doing things in the town are going through. For example, I was on the youth services committee, and it just so happened the first year that the youth services started in North Reading was the year that I was in like the youth group. And it was funny because they're like, wow, you were the first kid in it. And like now you're on the committee as an adult. Like this is great. Like full circle. We love this. And never once did the committee ever talk to any of the kids to see like what they needed. Right. I go, so you're having a bunch of 60-year and 70-year-olds tell people and tell the kids what programs they're going to do. Why don't you just ask them? Why don't you go to school and ask them and say, hey, like, what are you guys into now? And they'd be fighting over, well, there's this group here and this group here and this club has this and these committees all have the same support groups. I'm like, okay, well, then why do you have to have it? Why don't we all just talk together and see who's going to offer what program so that way we could do it a little bit better? Oh, no, we can't do that, Alexis. Well, isn't that like common sense?
It seems to be the easiest solution.
I'm like, well, I don't understand. So it was even like the ring around like that. I was like, this is just not sustainable for anybody that is actually living in the town to do if you have a family.
Well, and I think too, politics is very, there's a lot of people who get into it and then it's just like they're in these like circles around each other and, the infighting and it's disappointing. And the people who really should be having voices in towns like this, in our school systems, are people like us who are younger. And that's why, I'm sure you probably get, you should run. It's like, well, it's not really practical. And, there's a lot to it. So, I think that, and not that anybody who's older doesn't have good input, but it's almost like,
you're not in the day-to-day to make the calls that we need now.
You're in a different phase and it's, it's good, or at least to have kind of a mix of things. But, it's
or at least listen. I feel like if you want to dedicate the time and you want to run and you're older and maybe you're not as hip to, some of these people are 70, 75 years old. Right. They do not understand. And that's not, I don't feel like that's old, but like for the system, like, it's old. The difference between a 75-year-old and a 30-year-old with kids, like the time is different.
It's wide.
Right? So like we have social media and things that they don't understand per se. So now we're trying to teach them, hey, listen, let's do this. And I'm wasting more time teaching you how to do this than if you just let me do it myself. And there's a way more efficient way to do it. Right. I also think all of the stuff you have to do in Massachusetts, which I think is really funny, like this conflict training that you have to do is ridiculous. Like 4 hours of me having to
that's why that's why I mean that's that goes to like that's regulations and that's probably all because people were suing for something or doing this and that. I mean that's the problem. We also live in a very litigious world.
Oh, you have to be careful.
People love the idea, get a lawsuit, I'm like, right, but there's a lot of consequences on the other side of that now there's going to be more rules. Now there's going to be more regulations, things you have to go through all of these trainings.
The conflict of interest training, that's what it is. I'm like, come on, like.
Yeah, and ethics training, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's literally like you go through, you read it online, and then you check boxes, and then they say, "Oh, everybody's ethical."
Yeah, it's like that's really a good judge to see if people are ethical. But it's just it's all these steps that are so unnecessary. Yeah, and it's just I think that it's sad because someone like you who's very like I wanted to run just because I thought what they were doing to the people in town was ridiculous. I mean, I'm not nearly as qualified as you. I mean, I feel like you have a better.
We're all qualified.
I feel like I'm
different
just,
ways.
Yeah, different perspective, different ways, I guess. But like, I would think it would be great if you did. But I understand why you wouldn't with two small kids. Yeah, like it's just.
Well, and that's why I'm like I just rant online instead because I do. It's really interesting for me where I've kind of gone over the last couple of years because. During COVID, we were all home. There's so much, so much time, all that kind of stuff. And it was like, okay, I want to start doing something else that's, a little more like meaningful. Not that being a lawyer is not meaningful, but, it's sort of rote. You get in the day-to-days. It's like the same kind of stuff, right? Yeah. Over and over. And so that's why I like to talk. That's why I like to talk online about stuff because I do think that, I'm like, okay, well, if I'm not going to run now, maybe I can at least prompt some conversations, some discussion because we don't, we don't have it. And so then what happens is we have a political system made up of candidates that none of us really love for the most part.
Yeah. And I think that people voted this time. There wasn't really much. You know what I mean? So you had to pick a side. Right. You pick your side. Yeah. But I think a lot of people also made the decisions based on personality. Right. And like versus policy. Yeah. I mean, I tell everyone like I voted with my money. I didn't vote. I wasn't trying to take the person on a date. Like the person's not coming trying to date me, so I don't really care. You know what I mean? Like vote with your money. But some people take that and they're like, oh my God, that's awful. Like, why would you say that? I think it's hard for me too, because my mom and I used to agree on everything and we are polar opposites now. We can't even, it's literally one of those situations we can't even talk about politics at all. Like it turns into this negative, shuts the phone off. It's never me, by the way. Just saying. Well, it is never me. It is always her. She gets very upset and she shuts the phone off. And even today, before I was going to do a show with you, she goes, "Don't talk about politics, be Switzerland." She's like one of those people.
But she's the one that likes to talk politics.
I'm like, but she likes politics, and so do I. Like, where do we ride? She goes, "Always be Switzerland. It will affect your business. Don't ever talk about politics." And a lot of people feel like that. A lot of people are really afraid to voice their opinions, especially now with the whole Charlie Kirk thing. They're afraid to post online. Are people more afraid, or is this going to open up an eruption of people just like talking and creating dialogue? I hope that's the case.
I hope so. I mean, that's really like, I feel like it's almost like what my like mission in his life is, because I'm concerned. I mean, it's like we talk about this on like sort of a, broad spectrum, but like on a granular level, we need to be able to have conversations with, like you, my mom and I have different perspectives on a lot of things. And, she feels very strongly about a lot of stuff. And it sometimes can be difficult. And it's like, I want to be able to have these conversations, but even between people you're close with, it's these sort of our feelings get so inflamed. But, I think the point, and you look at somebody like Charlie Kirk, and I think that people need to look at him as somebody who was willing to go into spaces where people didn't agree with him and listen to them. And he might have, completely opposite beliefs and perspectives than, what A, B, or C aligns with. Yeah. But, the way I see things is if you're willing to have a conversation, if you're willing to, sit in front of someone and say like, okay, what's your name? Where are you from? Where's your question? Ask me. I will answer you respectfully. It might not be what you want to hear, but anybody who's willing to do that, like the people, we see so many people, online and, even in the old media space, but in the new media space too, who very firmly take positions on both sides. And I see that all as part of the problem. And I think that there are enough of us in the middle who want to talk and have these conversations, and we have to be able to say like, I know this conversation is going to be hard, and I know I'm going to get frustrated with your position. You're probably going to get frustrated with mine, but we have to have the conversation. When we say like, no, we can't talk about it, if we're not going to talk about it, how are we going to fix anything?
Politics are like off the table when we walk into my mom's. My husband and I are like, let's not even. Yeah. And
I get it, because in the world we live in today, it's so. I mean, everything is a fight. Like there's no. It is. I mean, everything's a fight.
You can post a fact and someone's like, "That's wrong."
Yes,
I'm like, but that's a fact,
right?
And I find it funny in my mom's case, because now she's big on TikTok, right? Yeah. She loves, like, she doesn't post, but she like watches TikToks. Yeah. So now I'm like, your algorithm is everything that you're agreeing with.
Right.
And she was like, well, no, it's not. This is all fact. And I was like, okay. So I started sending her some of like the stuff that I'm like, why don't you listen to this person who's credible?
Yep.
And now her algorithm's changed. And she goes, oh, I watched that video. And I'm like, oh, you did? And she's like, yeah, I didn't realize that. And I was like, oh, wow. Right. Did you read into it? Or are you getting your facts just from these 3-minute TikTok videos? Right. So I think that's a lot of the problem too, is like people are seeing what their algorithm is showing them. And they're just like, oh my God, these are all my people.
Well, and it is a little scary, because so many people don't even understand the algorithm. Like they don't even know that they're in it. They don't know that they're in. They don't know that they're getting that because that's what they're engaging with. So it's like, I say to literally everybody around me, I'm like, you have to seek out different information so your algorithm feeds you. So you don't understand. You should, if you're right, you should be watching left stuff too. If you're left, you should be watching right stuff too. Stuff in the middle, all across the board, because you can't, if you only hear your own perspective and you only surround yourself with people who think like you and talk like you and act like you and believe the same things, it's like, well, of course you're going to think you're right and everybody else is wrong. You're like,
but isn't that boring?
Everybody thinks like me, and I think it's just that, it's also like all the research shows now that people really don't want to be, they say they don't want to be friends with people of a different political spectrum. They don't want to date anybody. They don't want to marry anybody. So like we have these like solidly blue circles, solidly red circles. And it's like, I mean, it's not actually a real reflection of America.
When I bought my house, I went to a bunch of open houses and couldn't find anything. I randomly find this house on Facebook, and I'm like, I don't even care about the house.
I love that you found it on Facebook.
I did. I found this, and it was a picture of this toaster-sized house. It was tiny, and like he goes, it's on 5 acres, and I knew it was 45 minutes from here, and I was like, that's within my distance, and we wanted to have a farm, so like we're gonna go look at it. I met the guy who was wicked nice, and the point blank, first thing he said to me, he goes, so what side do you on? He's like, are you a Trumper or are you a lib? Tell me right now.
Oh no, which one do I say?
Judging by the house alone, I was like, I know the whole street's Trump. I'm like, all right, like come on, like I'm definitely not voting for Biden. Like if that's what you want to hear, okay. He goes, all right, I'll sell you the house.
Isn't that so
interesting? And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, I wasn't going to sell this house to a liberal. That's literally what he said to me. Like, and I'm not trying to like be mean and pick sides and don't come after me for it, but that's the truth. Like he was like, I am not selling my house to someone that's like that. I love my neighbors, and my neighbors all feel the same way, and I just want them to have someone that is agreeable in the middle. Yeah. And he goes, and I'm glad you don't have blue hair. And I was like, what?
Well, you know, like, and I think it's also too, I mean, for me, I'm in this like, lately, it's just like I hate the labels. I hate the labels that we use, because it's like, for the most part, we have these labels, and they're not accurate reflections of the majority. No. Like we said, when we say like, you know, we're saying, you know, extreme right or super left, we have like fringe, you know, and then the media just conflates the fringe. But most people, like, you know, I tell people all the time, and they're like, because I was in the Democratic Party. I was raised a Democrat. I mean, I was like Irish Catholic, Southie Democrat. Yeah. Like that's the world I live in. And to be honest, I still consider myself like an old school liberal, but that's not where
that's different than what is now.
Right. That's where like the party used to be. And you know, it's so it's funny though, because it's like I hear this word all the time, and it's like, you know, liberals, and I'm like, but like real liberals, like, and that's what I mean about like all these labels, these words that like we've all co-opted to like, basically, if I call you this,
well, it's like the radical liberal. It's like a different label. It shouldn't just be like liberal or like, you know what I mean? It should be separated. I mean, I work with people. You work with people every day. I work with people downstairs at the med spa every day. I have never once, except for one client that I have met that is a radical, raging, like she's what they make videos on. Yeah. And it's very funny for me.
They do exist.
They do exist. But like but truthfully, I was like, honestly, I think it's fake.
Right. I mean, they're far and few between.
Because you see it online, and it makes it sound like, okay, it's a bunch of college kids. Like that doesn't affect me. I don't care. They're not coming to my store anyway. Right. You know, like that's not my bread and butter anyway. So who cares? But I've never encountered one ever until this moment. And I'm doing her skin, and I literally looked in the mirror in my room, and I go, we're going to be quiet. We're just going to do our job because that's what I'm here to do. And like, she loves me. She books with me all the time. She thinks that we're great, but she has no idea where I stand with things. Do I think that she's out of her mind with most? I want to have her on my show, but I don't know how to do it in a nice way, because I know she'll be offended and walk out and leave. Yeah. Yeah. But it's like, I want to have that conversation with someone that it's so different, that has a different opinion than me. But that's so good. Do it. It's like they can't. I'm like, just sit there. Like, even if you don't agree with me, fine. Like, I don't care that you like. I don't like the color purple. If you love the color purple, I'm not gonna like be pissed off and walk off. You know what I mean? Like,
and I think you're the rarity though that really like actually wants to seek out and have those conversations, because you know, I think about all these issues that we have in society today that we're so divided on. And it's like, okay, as an attorney, every argument I present has an opposing argument, right? Yeah. And if you were to sit in court, for the most part, both of them sound pretty persuasive. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay. And a lot of times what a judge will do is what we call split the baby, right? So it's like, this one gets a little bit of this one gets a little bit of that. And that's what a negotiation is. Like you have to go in not only understanding the other side's perspective, but you have to go in knowing like I'm not all right and I'm not all wrong. And the same for them. And if we come out somewhere in the middle where at least,
you did a good job.
At least you can, people all the time would say, I don't understand, like, how you have this perspective. And I'm like, well, I think that's the problem because I don't think you try to understand it. Because I can understand your perspective. I don't agree with it. Yeah. But I understand how you get there, right? So as long as you have the ability to present your opinion and you can back it up with, why you feel that way, go like, okay, it's not my opinion. I don't agree with you. I don't think you're right. But all right. But in the world we live in today, Pete, we don't even get there. We just go like, you're wrong, I'm right. And that ends the conversation.
It's almost like with this one client, I remember, Bobby Kennedy came up in conversation and she was like, you like him? And I was like, well, he has some valid points. And she was like, oh my God. And she's like, you're this. And I was like, breathe. Yeah. Breathe. Like, I think there's valid points. I mean, he's not uneducated. He's been an attorney his entire career.
Well, I voted for Kennedy for president. Yeah. I basically campaigned from last year, and it's funny. He's one of the people that I get the most pushback about.
But he took the high road. He wanted and I think what he did was interesting. He knew that he wasn't going to win. Yeah. So he was like, what do I do? Do I not get my message across, or do I partner with someone who I might not agree with everything, but is going to put me in a position where I can make effective change? Swallowed his pride and did it. Did he lose probably a lot of support from his family and everybody else? Yeah. Absolutely. But I think that is the bigger person way to handle it than just saying, oh, I lost, tough. We're going to let him ride with what he wants.
Right. And not that it's specific to him, but I think that, because he's a pretty divisive figure, and I understand because he has, as somebody who actively supported him, I understand that he has unorthodox positions on a lot of things. And so, they're definitely counter to sort of what the prevailing narrative has been for a long time about science and things like that. And it's funny because, it's for me, I didn't even go towards him about vaccines or anything like that. It was more about, free speech and suppression. And he was, I tell people all the time, I'm like, hey, if the Democrats just let him run, he would have lost to Joe Biden, and then he would be gone and he wouldn't be your head of HHS. Yeah. But they was so insistent upon not letting him run. And that's actually why I kind of got involved with him, because you see this process in both the Republican and the Democratic establishments where they pick the candidates and, they go. And so, and I see him as kind of an outlier, but he's one of those figures that if you do have, I've lost a lot of followers because I supported him.
But why? I don't what? Because you have your own opinion.
Most I would say most people who are just something like I think he's just so different than what people expect. In the system, his ideas about autism and vaccines. I understand that
the CDC just released a study. I don't know if you saw it. Just released a study that said a 1,135% increase in autism and other issues with children that were vaccinated with a hepatitis B vaccine within 30 days. That's a legitimate study.
I haven't actually taken a in-depth peek at it, so I don't know when
have it
the
on my desk to read the whole thing right now, but I glimpsed over it.
Yep.
There is compelling data. People are going, and I'm not going to say, people know, I'm a doula. I help moms have babies all the time. I don't care if you want to vaccinate or if you don't want to vaccinate. You're the parent. If you want to make that decision, that's on you. If you ask me what I would do and what I did for my kids, my daughter literally almost died from a vaccine. That's that's literally how all of this started, because I was like, holy crap. This kid was in the eye. They literally said, well, she had a reaction to this.
How old was she?
30 days because I dosed her at the wrong time. It was a whole, I could have gone crazy.
Well, I think that's the thing I'm always a little suspicious of, broadly, I think that vaccines are beneficial. Like, as if we look at the big picture of society, right?
If they were studied right.
Right. But I'm just saying, just overall, do they generally, are they more helpful, the main ones, than harmful? Yes. But what is frustrating to me, and what always gives me little red flags, is that when there are harms and we don't acknowledge them. So for me, he would always say, when you talk about a lot of stuff, like, well, I listen to the moms, and I'm like, as a mom, your child, right? So if we have moms who say, my child got this and this happened, if we're dismissing that because we want to promote, vaccines as an overall public safety measure, that's problematic to me. And that doesn't mean that I'm saying don't get rid of vaccines or don't. But I think we need to validate the people who actually do have injuries from.
Absolutely.
And it's not just vaccines, it's any medication, any medical intervention.
Anything.
If there is some sort of injury, but they make you seem crazy. I mean, even when
I was ridiculed.
Were you?
Like, I was fired from 2, and this is why some people are like, well, I don't want to hire you as a doula because you were fired from pediatricians' offices. I was only fired because I was like, my kid literally almost died.
Yep.
She had 106 fever at 30 days old and was purple. Like, what?
Scary.
What are we doing here? Like, and within 24 hours of it being administered, what happened? Can we talk about it?
And you should be able to ask that question without
being, and then
and what is the response that you like
from the medical side?
Yeah.
They were like, "There's something wrong here. Like, you've had other children that have had no problems. Like, this is a very weird. Like, these are symptoms that a baby just wouldn't have out of nowhere. All the cultures were negative. I mean, we did every test. Can you imagine? I kid you not. When they take a brand new baby and they literally folded her in half to do a spinal tap on her to test her for meningitis and everything else, urine cath, everything to do for this baby, and everything was negative. There was no other thing that it could have been.
Right.
So that's what ignited, and literally why I opened Bloom, one of the reasons why I opened Bloom was because I was like, people need a safe place to go to just have a conversation. Does this work for me? Does this not work for me? There needs to be more support for people. Even if people say, I want to vaccinate for everything, that's fine. Right. I don't care what you do. I also think that people need to bring common sense back into everything. I mean, hepatitis B, just to say, is only given through sexual contact or IV drugs. If you're a halfway decent parent, your kid is not going to be exposed to that. That's what's causing a lot of problems that they're seeing. Is there a ton of data on it? No, because none of them have done a blind placebo-controlled study. I think that is a valid point. Whether you think that the idea of vaccines is good, great. I love that for you. If you don't, great. Love that for you. But why don't we just study it and make it and just put it on the table? Just study it the right way, like you would do any other drug that would get funded.
And that seems like to me, that seems like a fair
common
suggestion,
sense,
and but then we get into, this sort of conflation of multiple things, because we have, all right, vaccines may be good for a lot of people, may be really harmful for some people, but then we have, corporate interests, we have big pharma, we have financial incentives. And so so it gets, it gets more complicated. And that's what we're talking about, right? It's like when you have complicated issues, you don't have easy solutions. It's not just vaccines are good, vaccines are bad. It's like, okay, we have to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And, maybe there's something you say okay, that they can get to a place where you say okay, with most people genetically, they're not going to have any reaction, this and that. Or maybe we can test kids at, at a certain age to say, there's somebody who may have this interaction, it may have the side effects. So that's something you get to decide as a parent. I mean, it doesn't seem like, but what happens is when you push back and then you get this stop talking about that. I mean, that's how I feel. It's as soon as you tell me don't talk about that, it's well, that's what I want to talk about then. Yeah. Because why?
The second you push me on no, I'm going to push it harder.
I mean, and I think that's a reasonable response. That hey, wait a second, you've experienced this personally as a mother with a child. you get to have an opinion and your perspective, and you don't deserve to be treated a certain way because you know what happened with your child.
I think what really annoyed me the most is like when I just had a baby 4 weeks ago, right? So when I had the baby, I was like, listen, I don't want to give her anything right now. Like I am petrified from what I went through.
Sure.
I go, I can always delay. There's no issue with a delay, okay? And a lot of people have a problem with that. They're like, oh my God, you delayed.
Right.
Where's the baby going?
I know, right.
Like, I'm sorry, she's home with me. Like, she's fine. Like, we're not going anywhere. You know, vitamin K, erythromycin, and hepatitis B is what they suggest they get before they leave. None of which will be the end of the world if you decide to delay. I have never been bullied more by physicians when I was like, this experience happened to me. I don't want to do it. And then continued to get bullied from it. I think it's insensitive. If you do the math, a physician, and I can like give you the paperwork on this too. Pediatricians that do offer have 100 patients all on full normal vaccine schedule are roughly going to get about $250,000 to $300,000 in financial incentives at the end of the year for doing that. If you are a physician that does not have that, you get like 80 grand. What the hell do you think they're going to pick?
Right.
Like, I mean, so are you doing this like do no harm? Are you really doing that? Have you actually looked at the data? Because when I've asked pediatricians, they literally don't have an answer for me.
Well, I think too, it's, and I always, anytime I talk about this stuff, I always think it's important, that I just have an opinion as a person who looks at this kind of stuff. I only have an opinion that went through it.
You're right.
I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. So I'm not in my area of expertise. But I do think that, it's sort of a bigger question about our medical system as a whole. And, the fact that, they barely teach nutrition in medical school. And really what the goal is like, medication or interventions and this kind of stuff. And that let's not look. And so I think that, sometimes I think we look at it as the, maybe doctors who like the experience that you had with a physician. It's almost like they're so in the system that they don't see the outside questions. And they, I'm somebody who believes that most everybody is well-intentioned, not
you would
not
like
everybody,
to think so.
But I think, if you're a pediatrician, I think you generally go into that field
and
to
you like kids.
You like kids, you want to help kids, and they believe that the best thing to do is vaccinate. And that's fair. You can believe that, but you have to be able to also understand that there are other perspectives and there are other things that may be happening. And if somebody has an experience to make you feel like that, what that does is it pushes you away from what they want, where they want you to be, or what they think is best. And then, and who does that help?
And then I think the firing of people is what really got me pissed off. Because you're telling me I can't come to your practice if I don't do what you say.
Yes.
Like,
and they all, I mean,
are you God?
They
like,
all
are you,
say that.
If you don't want to do this and you can't come here, you can't be involved. So you instantly get put into this group of people. Once again, we're categorizing people of, you're this crazy, crunchy mom. And I tell everyone, listen, I might be crispy. I have a farm. I eat organic, but I get Botox too. Okay. Like life's about balance. All right.
A little bit of everything,
life's about balance.
Yeah.
But it's wild to me that you're going to tell me, okay, because you don't agree with my medical opinion or what the CDC follows, like we're not going to service you. But what if I honestly have questions? Like I liked you as a physician. Like, why can't we just have a normal conversation? They cannot do it. And they're bound by their practice rules and you're kicked out.
Yep. And that's virtually every pediatrician's office. And at least in Massachusetts, you can't find like a holistic, what I was looking for my kids is like, I would really like a balance between both. I just want to have those conversations. Like my kids are vaccinated.
Middleton,
I'm not against them.
Shout out Middleton Family Medicine. They're fantastic.
Oh, good to know. Well, if
there's also
on the South Shore,
peds.
Anyway,
there's all holistic peds, which is in, I believe she's in Winchester, but she only takes newborns and then goes from there because she's so crazy. Yeah. New Hampshire has a lot more flexibility. I think the crazy thing for me is living in Mass my whole life. I lived in Jersey and New York for a little while, but grew up in Massachusetts, and Medford and North Reading, and then moving to New Hampshire. the people, it is night
different. Yeah.
and day
Yeah.
difference. And I'm talking about like real New Hampshire people, not like us transplants
Right.
that move there. It is so different. Like I was in a group yesterday and this mom was like, hey, I want to delay stuff. I just have some questions. I'm looking for another pediatrician. And all of these moms were like, hey, we went here. It was great. If you took that exact same post and put it in the North Reading page, you would get chewed out and you'd be told that you're the worst parent in the world. It is so wild to me how like negative and nasty people are here versus like up there.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just that one thing, but it was crazy.
Well, I would think too. It would probably go the other way if you went. You know what I mean?
I want to give my kid everything. Can I get my kid 6 boosters?
But that's the problem. It's like there is no gray. It's crazy for me. It's very frustrating. Like I feel like it viscerally every day that we can't have conversations about anything, whether it's vaccines, whether it's politics, whether it's like virtually everything in the world now. It's like you have to have a hardline position and that's it. There's no negotiation. There's no talking about it, and it's just, it's not good for the country. It's not good for, I get all like existential. I'm like, democracy is failing, but I do actually worry about it. I am the last couple of years.
Where do you think that we're headed? Like, where do you think things are headed right now?
I think that we're losing. I think we have lost such respect in our institutions. I'm concerned about losing respect for the courts, and it can happen pretty quickly. All empires fall. They generally all fall from within. We're only 250 years old.
Yeah.
People think, like we're America, it can't happen here. No, it can happen here.
Absolutely.
And once it happens, it's not going back.
What does that look like for you? What does a fall like that look like?
I don't really know. I think it's just this like continuation of, if we stay where we are, if we don't come together, if we don't talk about these things, I think we're just going to be further apart. We'll probably just continue to have really, really, in Massachusetts, we'll get like hyper blue, even more blue than we are. The places that are red are going to get more, and then
Do you think Mass is fully blue?
Fully, no.
I don't think so.
No.
Because honestly, like I don't see it ever.
I think
old school liberal, yes.
Yep.
I think old school Dem, yes. But that's not the people that are running.
No, I think that I think it's more blue than not. Like where I am is very blue. I'm very blue. But
up here,
I also
North
think
Shore,
that,
North Shore all day.
Like
no.
I also don't think. I feel like when they run people on the other side, like when the Republican Party in Massachusetts runs people, I think they run people too far to the right. I think when I think of, the people that I'm around now, people that I grew up around, I would say people were either conservative Democrats or moderate Republicans. And I feel like they're kind of the same thing. They just are like, if I grew up as a conservative, if I grew up in the Democratic Party, but I lean more conservative, but they're like, well, I can't call myself a Republican. I've been a Democrat my whole life.
Yeah.
In the same way with the Republican, because I think there's a lot of, I actually think, I know Massachusetts gets a lot of, shit, but I actually think we have a lot of things here that are really, really beneficial. And if we went other places, we would realize how lucky we have it here. I think, that, but we still have this like, this representation here that is really more on the extreme end because that's who runs in Massachusetts. So like nobody really runs from, even look at our Republican governors, you look at Charlie Baker, you look at Mitt Romney. They were moderates. They would be not Republican if they were in Texas. You know what I mean? Mitt Romney might, but like Charlie Baker is basically, a Democrat any place else. So you gotta, but this is a perfect kind of place to meet in the middle.
Yeah. I think for you growing up in politics, it was like big for your family to talk about. When I was a kid, I never remember like ever asking or knowing what my parents were or anyone around us.
Yeah.
I never, like, that was never a conversation. I think it's very different for kids now because I know parents that don't want their kids to play with other kids that their parents have different views.
Crazy.
Like, I've never seen such a divide as there is now. And I think in mass, it's really hard because like, I've had people like look up the show, or they find out and they're like, oh no, like Alexis's kids can't come.
I mean,
and
that's
I'm
crazy.
like, they're freaking
they're the problem, but they're the problem. I mean, that's, where, it's funny because, my kids know, obviously I talk about this stuff and they'll know politics because that's how, that's my world, right?
Exactly. It's different because it's your world.
Yeah. But, I mean, I'm very, like, they'll ask questions like, do we not like this person? Do we not like this person? We say, and, my answer is always, I don't agree with these perspectives, but we always respect the office. Yeah. We respect the process. We're all entitled to our opinions. Yeah. We're all entitled to who we vote for. This person that we know likes this person that we know doesn't like this person. And they're all allowed, and they're all allowed to do that, but now people raise their kids to be partisan, and
I also think it's weird when like parents and I always personally protest for me. I'm just kind of like, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Do you? I'm glad you have the right to do that. If that's what you want to do, protest all day. I just have kids and businesses. I don't have time. I spend my time with more tangible things. That's just me.
Sure.
But I think it's very interesting to see adults bring children to these protests.
Right.
That can sometimes turn violent. Most of the time they do. And I just think it's weird. Like, I think it's like you're making them, like, you're putting them in this situation. But I see why people do it. I just don't, I just wouldn't do that. I don't know. Maybe it's just like not a place for kids.
Yeah. I think it's just, I mean, I think it goes back to, it's not, I mean, like you said, I'm not really somebody who like goes to that kind of stuff. So it's not something that I would particularly do. But, I think it depends. It's like, how are you raising your kids and bringing them to show like, okay, if you want to be vocal about something, this is one way you can do it. Like, this is the process. Yeah. But also, to me, it's not so much that like, you shouldn't do this, but you should do it in conjunction with other things, right? So like, as long as you're showing your children, I mean, because I actually do think that we should teach our kids politics. I think we should teach them civics, government, like how things work. I think 100%. A lot of the reason why we're in the world we are today is because I think people don't understand the system. I don't think they understand the value of democracy and like how lucky we are to live in America.
They have no idea how lucky they are.
And that's why it's so people don't see it falling apart because I think genuinely don't understand, how it works and why it is so important.
Well, go live somewhere else is what I tell people. If you don't like it so bad, like when I see all these people online and they're like, I hate this is terrible, they go.
Yeah. Or do something about it.
But no one's making you stay here.
Right.
So then just leave and try somewhere else. If you think that's better, then bring those ideas back and then tell us and let's go from there.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad was born and raised in Greece, came here. I mean, they like fled to come here. My grandmother was in like, back in Greece during World War II and was like in concentration camps because they like put them in these camps and they literally only the way that she made all the little kids not get like assaulted was like offering herself up and then giving them cigarettes that came in their meal packs. So like people like that fled to come here because this country's better.
Look what she had to go
look what she had to do to come here. You know what I mean?
And
so
most people have it on easy street in America and they don't realize it.
Exactly. So I think a lot of people like, they don't really realize like how
and
much.
And I will caveat to that to say the world we live in today is very hard for people to survive it. So this is not easy street in terms of, there's a lot of problems, but in the big picture, when we look at the rest of the world, America is a very special place. And America was built on this idea that people came together to ensure that we had a place that we could all think what we want. Yeah. We could all speak what we want and we could come to some sort of compromise, and unfortunately it seems we're moving further away from that than we should be. But, all we could do is keep talking.
Keep trying. Right. Well, it was so nice to have you here. If there's one like little pearl that you could give to like the audience, what would it be? Like a little advice.
I would say open your ears and just keep your mouth shut and listen first. And, it's okay to hear different perspectives. And I don't mean that in a rude way, but really to, my dad always says, first be nice. And I think that if you look at the person across from you as a human being and you just, you endeavor to have like a nice, friendly conversation, even when, even we had some different perspectives about things, that's okay. And once we hear a person speak a different perspective, but we're like, oh, but I like her though. Then we say like, okay, I see what you mean. So I think people just need to take a deep breath, step back, before we, don't go with that gut reaction and just try to listen to the other side.
I love that. Well, thank you so
thanks for
much for
having me.
agreeing.
This was great.
Fun.
Yeah,
well, hopefully we'll have you back again.
Yeah.